He's not breathing! Somebody help him! The panicked scream tore through the hushed lobby of the Holloway Institute. It was a place built on silence and control, a temple of glass and steel where the only sounds were the soft chime of elevators and the whisper of expensive shoes on polished marble. But this sound, raw and jagged with terror, shattered the calm completely. Leona Crestwood, a CEO who could command boardrooms with a single glance, was on her knees. Her iron-willed composure, the armor she wore every day, had cracked. Her son Finn, a small, pale boy of 8, was gasping, his chest heaving with ragged, useless breaths. His face was turning a terrifying shade of blue. Standing a few feet away, Doctor, Eris Holloway was frozen. As the Institute's star scientist, her mind cycled through diagnoses, anaphylaxis, acute asthmatic crisis, but her body wouldn't move. She was paralyzed by the sheer, primal fear of watching a child suffocate. The child of the woman who held her entire career in her perfectly manicured hands. Security guards were rushing forward, fumbling with radios, their training meant for intruders. Not this. A call had gone out to the on-site medical team, but they were a world away, 3 floors up. It was Owen Ledger, the janitor polishing the floor by the west entrance, who moved first. He dropped his buffer, its hum dying with a soft whine. He didn't run. He moved with a fluid certainty that seemed to slow time. He slid across the marble floor on his knees, his movements economical and precise. "Ma'am, I need you to give me some space," he said, his voice low and steady, cutting through Leona's frantic cries. Leona looked up, her eyes wild. "Who are you? Get a doctor!" Owen didn't answer. His focus was entirely on Finn. "Finn, can you hear me? I'm Owen. I'm going to help you." He gently placed one hand on the boy's trembling shoulder and the other on his back, tilting him forward slightly. "That's it. Lean on me." His voice was a calm rhythm in a world of chaos. Eris finally unfroze, stepping forward. "What are you doing?" "You can't move him." "His airway is closing," Owen said without looking at her. He spotted a half-eaten protein bar with peanuts listed in the ingredients on the floor. "It's an allergic reaction." "His emergency inhaler, does he have one?" Leona, jolted by the question, fumbled with Finn's bag. "Yes, here." She thrust a small blue albuterol inhaler into his hand. Owen took it, his hand steady. He popped the cap, inserted it into a spacer he pulled from another pocket of the bag, and shook it with a practiced snap of the wrist. "Okay, Finn, I know this is scary. We're going to breathe together. Breathe out as much as you can. Good boy." He waited a beat, his timing perfect. "Now." He pressed the canister and held the spacer to Finn's lips. "Slow breath in. Slow, slow, slow. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Let it out." He repeated the process, his movements a seamless ballet of practiced care. He didn't look like a janitor. He looked like someone who had done this 100 times before. The wail of a siren grew louder, and the Institute's medical team finally burst through the doors. But by the time they reached them, the worst had passed. The terrifying blue tint was receding from Finn's lips, replaced by a pale pink. His ragged gasps were settling into shaky, deeper breaths. He was crying now, quiet, exhausted sobs, his hands clutching the front of Owen's gray uniform. A paramedic knelt beside them. "What happened?" "Anaphylactic response, secondary asthma attack," Owen reported, his voice flat, professional. "Administered 2 puffs of albuterol via spacer. Vitals are stabilizing." He gently unwrapped Finn's fingers from his shirt and eased back, melting into the background as the medical professionals took over. He became invisible again. He picked up his buffer, his shoulders slumping slightly, as if the energy that had surged through him had now vanished. Leona stood slowly, her composure returning like a mask, but her eyes were fixed on the janitor. She watched him walk away, the soft squeak of his work boots echoing on the floor. "Mom?" Finn's voice was a weak whisper from the gurney. Leona rushed to his side. "I'm here, baby." "You're going to be okay," the quiet man, Finn murmured. "He told me a story about a star." Leona looked over her shoulder, but Owen was already gone. She looked at her head of security, who had been standing by uselessly. Her voice was cold steel. "Find out who that was," she commanded. "I want everything about him, his name, his history, everything." "On my desk in an hour." The guard nodded. "His name is Owen Ledger, ma'am. He's on the night crew." "I don't care what crew he's on," Leona snapped. "A man like that doesn't just mop floors. Find out what he's hiding." The smell of antiseptic still clung to Owen's clothes as he pushed open the door to his small apartment. It was a scent he knew better than his own. He slipped off his worn work boots and moved through the dim living room. The place was spotless, not just clean, but sterile. Not a home, a safe zone. In the corner, under the soft glow of a nightlight, Poppy was asleep. She was curled on her side in a specialized bed, a thin tube tracing a path from a quietly humming machine to the back of her small hand. Her breathing was shallow. Owen knelt beside her, his large, calloused hand gently brushing a stray piece of hair from her forehead. Her skin was almost translucent. "Hey, sweet pea," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion he never showed the world. "Daddy's home." Poppy stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. They were large, hazel eyes, full of a light that defied the frailty of her body. "Did you clean the stars tonight?" she murmured. Owen managed a small smile. It was their nightly ritual. He worked at the Holloway Institute, a gleaming glass tower. To Poppy, it was where the stars were kept, and her father's job was to polish them until they shone. "I did," he said softly. "Polished every single one." She smiled. "Tell me a story." He settled into the worn armchair beside her bed and began to tell her about a clumsy comet and a brave little star. He'd told this story a dozen times, but he told it like it was the first, his voice weaving a world of safety and magic. Tonight, though, the images in his head weren't of comets and stars. They were of a small boy with a blue face and the terrifying, familiar weight of a life held in his hands. For 10 minutes, he hadn't been Owen Ledger, the janitor. He had been someone else, someone he had buried a long time ago. The feeling left him hollow. He had sworn never to be that person again, but he had broken his own rule. And someone had noticed. Leona Crestwood's eyes had bored into him, not with gratitude, but with a cold, analytical curiosity that terrified him. "Meanwhile, 15 floors up, Doctor." Eris Holloway stared at a computer monitor. The lobby incident had left her rattled. She felt a sting of shame at her own paralysis, followed by annoyance. The janitor. He had moved with an assurance she, a doctor of immunology, had lacked. "Anything?" she asked her lab assistant, Ben. He shook his head. "The results on batch 7 are the same, Doctor. The cell cultures aren't binding. It's like the control group is contaminated." Again, Eris ran a hand through her hair. This was the third batch in 2 weeks to fail. Her project, a revolutionary gene therapy, was stalling. And Leona Crestwood was not a patient woman. An email she'd sent an hour after the lobby incident was still burning on Eris's screen. Subject: delays. Doctor: Holloway, today's events: unfortunate. Let's not have any similar surprises with my investment. The board requires a progress report by Friday. I expect significant positive data. Don't disappoint me. Eris slammed her laptop shut. "Run it again, Ben. Triple-check everything. Someone is getting sloppy." In her penthouse, Leona Crestwood sat by her son's bedside. The report from her head of security lay on the nightstand. She picked it up. Subject: Owen Ledger, age 38. Employment: history. Custodial services: 5 years. Warehouse logistics: 2 years. Various temporary labor: 3 years. Education: Northgate High School diploma. Next of kin: Poppy Ledger, daughter age 7. criminal record, none. A portrait of a completely unremarkable life. A working-class single father. It made no sense. The man she had seen on the floor was not a high school graduate who pushes a mop. He was something more. There's a gap, her security chief had told her. Almost 4 years between his last temp job and when he started in logistics. No employment records, no credit history. It's like he fell off the grid. Leona stared at the report. Owen Ledger. She didn't know what he was hiding, but she would find out. Back in his apartment, Owen sat at the kitchen table. He pulled a worn folder from a locked drawer. Inside were medical bills, insurance denials, and a single brochure for the Holloway Institute's Department of Immunological Research. He opened it, his eyes falling on a picture of Dr. Aris Holloway. Below it, he had circled a line in red ink. Phase 3 trials for HVT-074 are currently underway, with unprecedented results in treating rare pediatric autoimmune disorders. Poppy's doctor had told him last week. She has months, Owen. Maybe. This trial. It's her only shot. He closed his eyes, the weight of it all pressing down. His daughter's only hope was locked away in a laboratory cleaned by his own hands, run by a woman who saw him as nothing, and funded by another who now saw him as a puzzle to be solved. And he knew, with chilling certainty, that if they discovered who he really was, they would never let him or his daughter anywhere near it. The next night, the air in the Holloway Institute felt different. Owen could feel it in the way the security guards watched him, their gazes lingering. He was no longer invisible. He kept his head down, focusing on the rhythmic swoosh of his mop, the simple work that had been his shield for years. He was cleaning the glass partition outside the main cryo-storage unit when the executive elevator chimed. Leona Crestwood stepped out. She wore tailored black trousers and a simple cashmere sweater. It was a calculated disarming. She was not alone. Holding her hand was Finn. "Mr. Ledger." Leona's voice was smooth, measured. Owen stopped mopping and turned slowly. "Ma'am, Finn has something he wanted to give you," she said, nudging the boy forward. Finn shuffled his feet and held out a folded piece of construction paper. Owen wiped his hands before taking it. He unfolded it. It was a child's drawing of 2 stick figures. One was small and blue. The other was tall and held a bright yellow star. "That's you," Finn whispered, pointing. "You're the star polisher." Owen felt a lump form in his throat. He crouched to Finn's level. "This is the best drawing I've ever seen, Finn. I'm going to put it in a very special place." Finn finally looked up, a small, hesitant smile on his face. "Mommy said you were brave." Leona's expression was unreadable. "I came to thank you properly, Mr. Ledger." "My son, what you did was remarkable. I've arranged for a substantial bonus to be added to your next paycheck." Owen stood, carefully folding the drawing into his pocket. "That isn't necessary, ma'am. I just did what anyone would have done." "No," Leona said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Not just anyone could have done that. Where did you learn to handle a medical crisis with such efficiency?" The question hung in the air, sharp and pointed. Owen could feel the trap. "First aid courses. The company requires them. And I watch a lot of medical shows on TV." It was a weak explanation, and they both knew it. Leona's lips thinned. He had refused her reward and given her a lie. The file said he was a simple man. The man before her was anything but. "I see," she said. "Well, my offer stands. If there's anything you need, my office is aware it wasn't an offer. It was a test. A man like him would eventually need something. And when he did, he would come to her, and she would get her answers." She took Finn's hand. "Come, sweetheart." As they walked away, Finn gave Owen a small wave. Owen watched them go, his heart pounding. He had survived, but this was only the beginning. He was a mouse being circled by a hawk. Later, the building settled into slumber. Owen was on the 17th floor. He was emptying the trash when a faint, high-pitched whine caught his ear, coming from Aris Holloway's main lab. It was a sound he recognized with a sickening jolt. A centrifugal freezer with a failing coolant pump. He peered through the small glass window. The room was dark, save for the glow of monitors. The freezer had a small red light blinking on its control panel. A warning light. But someone had placed a piece of black electrical tape over it, rendering it nearly invisible. Owen's blood ran cold. That freezer held all of Eris's research samples, Poppy's only hope. If the temperature rose, everything would be destroyed. Protocol was to call security. Security would call the on-call lab tech, who would take 20 minutes to arrive. By then, it could be too late. His mind screamed at him to walk away, be invisible. But his feet were already moving. He pulled a master key card from his belt, a low-level card, but a grateful security guard had upgraded his access a few months prior without logging it. Owen swiped the card. The lock clicked open. He slipped inside. The digital display on the freezer was flashing an error code he knew, E07. Secondary pump failure. He pulled off the front panel. A thin, clear tube that fed coolant to the backup pump had been slightly disconnected. Not broken, deliberately loosened, just enough to create a slow, cascading failure. This was sabotage. He could fix it in 30 seconds. But he would leave a trace. He would be on surveillance. A janitor who knew how to service complex medical equipment. He would be exposed. He thought of Poppy. He thought of Leona's cold eyes. He couldn't fix it, but he couldn't walk away. He pulled a small notepad from his pocket and scribbled 4 words, his handwriting disguised and blocky. Check coolant pump 2. Valve loose. He folded the paper and slipped it under Dr. Holloway's keyboard. Then he slipped back out of the lab, closed the door, and vanished into the shadows, leaving the warning behind like a ticking bomb. Eris Holloway arrived at the lab just after dawn. Then she saw it. A small, folded piece of paper on her keyboard. Her first reaction was irritation. She unfolded it. The 4 words, written in stark, blocky letters, were a command or a warning. Check coolant pump 2. Valve loose. She nearly tossed it, dismissing it as a prank, but something stopped her. It was too specific. With a sigh, she walked to the centrifugal freezer. Everything looked normal. The temperature was stable. Green lights blinked. She was about to turn away when her eyes caught a tiny glint on the control panel. A small piece of black electrical tape covered one of the secondary status lights. Her heart skipped a beat. She peeled it off. Underneath, a single red light was blinking a steady, silent alarm. Her breath hitched. She wrenched open the front panel. Following the lines, her eyes darted to the secondary coolant pump. And there it was. The feed tube, hanging loose by a millimeter. A slow drip of coolant was pooling beneath it. The primary pump was holding the temperature for now, but it was burning itself out. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The tape. The loosened valve. This wasn't a mechanical failure. It was sabotage. Precise, patient, and designed to be catastrophic. Her contaminated samples. Had they been contaminated at all? Or had the temperature fluctuated just enough to skew the results? Someone was trying to destroy her work from the inside. She looked at the note. Whoever wrote this had just saved her project. But who? And why do it this way? Later that morning, she was summoned to Leona Crestwood's office. Leona sat behind a vast obsidian desk, her face impassive. Dr. Holloway, Leona began, I've reviewed your project's lack of progress. Combined with the security lapses, the board is getting nervous. We are a business, not a charity. Eris felt a flush of anger. The research is sound. We've had some equipment malfunctions. I'm not interested in excuses, Leona cut in. I'm interested in results. The board has approved an accelerated timeline. You have 1 month to produce a viable sample for preliminary human trials. 1 month, Eris. If you can't do it, I'm pulling your funding. 1 month. It was impossible. Leona, that's not enough time. The protocols. Make it enough time. Leona said, her voice a menacing whisper. Or find a new sandbox to play in. Eris walked out, the blood pounding in her ears. 1 month to save her life's work, while fighting a saboteur she couldn't identify. That afternoon, Owen sat in a small examination room, Poppy on his lap. Dr. Anya Sharma looked at the chart, her expression gentle but weary. "The immunosuppressants aren't holding her anymore, Owen," she said softly. "Her T-cell count is dropping again. The inflammation markers are the highest they've ever been." Owen felt the familiar cold dread. "So what's next? Increase the dosage?" Dr. Sharma shook her head. "We're already at the maximum safe level. It's time to start talking about palliative options. Making her comfortable." The words hit him with the force of a blow. Palliative. Comfortable. They were giving up. "No," Owen said, his voice raw. "There's the trial. The HVT-074 trial at the Holloway Institute. Owen, we've been over this. The trial is closed. They aren't accepting new patients, especially not for compassionate use." "Then we get them to make an exception," Owen insisted. Dr. Sharma gave him a sad smile. "You can't fight a billion-dollar corporation with hope, Owen." He left the clinic with Poppy in his arms. He could feel her life slipping through his fingers. He had saved the research, but now the clock was ticking faster, and a saboteur, a ruthless CEO, and a wall of corporate indifference stood between his daughter and her last chance. Back in her lab that night, Eris couldn't shake the image of the note. Trusting no one, she bypassed security and pulled up the raw surveillance footage from the hallway. She fast-forwarded through hours of emptiness. Then, at 3:14 a.m., a figure appeared. A man in a gray janitor's uniform. He paused outside her door before swiping a card and slipping inside for no more than 90 seconds. She couldn't see his face clearly, but she could see his build, his gait. It was him, the janitor from the lobby. The idea was insane, impossible, but the evidence was right there. He left the note. A janitor. How could he possibly know what a loose valve on a secondary coolant pump was? Eris leaned closer, her heart hammering. She zoomed in on the grainy footage, trying to get a clearer image of the man who polished the floors, the man who held a secret that could save her project or prove she was losing her mind. The grainy image was a ghost, a figure in gray, moving with a purpose that contradicted his uniform. Eris watched the clip a dozen times. Owen Ledger. It defied logic, but the evidence was irrefutable. He had been in her lab. He had left the note. Why? She didn't wait. She took the elevator down to the 17th floor and found him at the end of the hall, cleaning the baseboards. "Mr." Ledger Owen flinched. He straightened up slowly, his face a careful mask. "Dr. Holloway, you're working late." "So are you," Eris replied. She held up the folded paper. "Did you write this?" Owen's eyes flickered to the note. He shook his head. "I'm sorry, Doctor. I don't know what that is." "Don't lie to me," Eris said, her voice gaining an edge of steel. "I have security footage of you entering my lab at 3:14 a.m. I found this note on my keyboard." Owen's composure didn't crack, but Eris saw a flicker of deep fear in his eyes. "There must be a mistake," he said quietly. "Sometimes we empty the biohazard bins." "The bins were empty," Eris shot back. "And they don't teach you how to diagnose a pending failure in a cryofreezer's secondary coolant pump in janitorial training. I'm going to ask you again. Who are you?" He was trapped. The janitor persona was disintegrating. "I'm the janitor," he finally said, his voice raspy. "No," Eris insisted. "You're not." What was it? An army medic? An engineer? Owen met her eyes, and the desperation she saw there startled her. It wasn't the look of a man caught in a lie. It was a man watching his world crumble. "Does it matter?" he asked. "I saw something was wrong. I couldn't just walk away." "Why?" she pressed. "Why do you care about my research?" "Because your work isn't just about data and funding, Doctor." The words burst out of him, raw. It's about people running out of time. There are kids counting on you to succeed. Your project is their last hope. The raw emotion silenced her. He was talking about someone. The pleading desperation in his eyes. It was the same look she saw on parents in clinical trial waiting rooms. A new variable entered her equation. A motive. Who are you trying to save, mister? Ledger? She asked softly. Owen flinched. I'm just asking you to be careful. Someone is trying to stop you. The valve. It was deliberate. He was deflecting, offering her a piece of himself, but only a piece. For now, it was enough. She had a saboteur in her lab and an impossible deadline. This strange janitor might be the only person she could trust. Okay, Ledger, she said. For now, I won't ask any more questions. Your visit to my lab last night didn't happen, but I need you to be my eyes and ears at night. You see things no one else does. If you notice anything out of place, you come directly to me. Understood? Owen looked at her, a flicker of disbelief and relief in his eyes. He gave a single, sharp nod. I understand. A fragile, unspoken alliance was formed. As Eris walked away, her mind raced. She had more questions than answers, but she also had a new, secret weapon. A ghost in the machine. Miles away, Leona Crestwood's phone buzzed. It was her head of security. We found something in that 4-year gap, Ms. Crestwood, the man's voice said. He wasn't on any financial grid, but we cross-referenced hospital admission records. His daughter, Poppy Ledger, was a long-term patient at St. Michael's Pediatric Hospital. Severe autoimmune deficiency. Leona felt a chill. And, here's the interesting part, the security chief continued. There was a nurse on that same pediatric ICU floor. A young guy, a prodigy. He resigned suddenly. The same week an inquiry was launched into an equipment malfunction that resulted in a patient's death. The hospital sealed the records, but I pulled his original employment file. His name was Owen Ledger. The words echoed in Leona's penthouse. His name was Owen Ledger. She lowered the phone, the pieces fitting together. A disgraced nurse, a patient death, a sick daughter. It wasn't a puzzle anymore. It was a tragedy. Her first instinct was to eliminate the threat. A man with a history like that was a liability. He had to be fired. But then the image of Finn gasping for air flashed in her mind. She saw Owen, not as a liability, but as the only person who had known what to do. And he had a daughter, a little girl named Poppy. The mother in her wrestled with the CEO. Firing him would be easy, clean, but it would also be cruel. And a waste. This man had a unique set of skills and a motive more powerful than any paycheck, a motive she could use. Down on the 17th floor, Owen moved with a new purpose. His eyes weren't on scuff marks. They were on people. He was a ghost with a mission. He noticed things. Dr. Coleman, Eris's rival from oncology, was in the immunology wing far too often. A new cleaning crew had been hired, and one of them seemed particularly clumsy near the data servers. He reported it all to Eris in brief, coded notes left in a hollowed-out book on a library cart. Coleman in Lab 3 again. 11 p.m. New cleaning crew. Man with scar. Avoids cameras. Eris, in turn, worked with a renewed, frantic energy. The 1-month deadline felt like a declaration of war. She implemented new security protocols, trusting no one but the anonymous information from her ghost. A strange relationship was forming. He fed her information from the shadows, and she used it to protect the research that was his only hope. 2 nights later, Leona made her move. She found Owen wiping down the doors of the cryo-storage unit. He tensed the moment he heard her elevator. He turned, his face telling her he knew this was coming. We need to talk, mister. Ledger, she said, holding a tablet. St. Michael's Pediatric Hospital. The ICU. You were a nurse there for 2 years, a very good one. Owen's face went pale. The mop handle clattered to the floor. They called you a prodigy, Leona continued, relentless, until an incident with a ventilator. A 7-year-old boy died. The hospital claimed mechanical failure, but the inquiry focused on you. You resigned before they could fire you. He could barely breathe. This was his nightmare, standing before him in a $1,000 sweater. "And your daughter," Leona said, her voice softening a fraction. "Poppy, severe primary immunodeficiency." Owen finally found his voice, a broken whisper. "Please, don't." "Don't what?" Leona asked. "Don't expose the fact that I have a disgraced nurse with a dead child in his past, working 30 feet from a lab conducting pediatric research." He squeezed his eyes shut. "It wasn't my fault. The ventilator was faulty. I wrote it up 3 times. They buried the reports." "It doesn't matter what I believe," Leona said coolly. "It only matters what it looks like. And right now, it looks like a liability I cannot afford." Owen braced a hand against the wall. "So you're going to fire me?" "That was my first thought," Leona admitted. "But you saved my son's life. That buys you one chance." She swiped the tablet to a new screen. "Dr. Holloway's project is being sabotaged. My investment is at risk." Owen stared, confused. "You're in a unique position, Mr. Ledger. You're invisible. You see everything," Leona said. "I want you to find out who is trying to destroy this project. You will report everything directly to me, not to Dr. Holloway. To me. You want me to be your spy," Owen breathed. "I want you to be a concerned employee," Leona corrected smoothly. Her voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Your daughter needs Dr. Holloway's trial to live. I'm the only one who can make that happen. I can sign off on a compassionate use exemption. I can save her life." She paused. "Help me, Mr. Ledger. Find my saboteur, and I will save your daughter. Fail me, and this file about your past goes to every news outlet in the city. And your daughter will never get her chance." Owen felt like he was drowning. Leona's words were anchors pulling him down. Spy. Betrayal. The price for his daughter's life was the last shred of his integrity. There was no choice. A father doesn't get to have a conscience when his child is dying. He picked up his mop, his hands shaking. "I'll do it," he said, his voice dead. Leona gave a small, satisfied nod. "I've created a secure, anonymous email address for you. Send your reports there." Daily. She turned and walked away, leaving him alone with the wreckage of his life. The next few days were a special kind of hell. Owen moved through his shift like a man haunted. Every conversation was a potential betrayal. Every observation ammunition for a woman who would not hesitate to use it. He sent his first report from a library computer. Subject: night observations. Dr. Coleman, oncology. In immunology lab again. Accessed imaging server. New contract cleaner, male, scar on left hand, spent unusual time near main server room. He hit send, a wave of nausea washing over him. He was feeding Leona information he had already planned to give Eris. He was walking a tightrope over a canyon. An hour later, he saw Leona's plainclothes security discreetly shadowing Dr. Coleman. The next night, the contract cleaning company was summarily dismissed. Leona was acting on his intelligence with terrifying speed. She was watching, and she was in control. His interactions with Eris became strained. He still left his notes, but they were shorter. He avoided her gaze. He was her ally and a spy set against her, and the dual roles were tearing him apart. Eris felt the shift. Her ghost was becoming distant. The pressure of Leona's deadline was already crushing her, and now, the one person she trusted felt like he was slipping away. Then, one night, she had a breakthrough. Acting on one of Owen's earlier tips, Eris cross-referenced the supply logs. Every contaminated batch had used filters from a specific crate. She isolated the remaining filters and reran her most critical experiment. It worked. The cells bound to the therapy agent perfectly. The data that flooded her screen was a beautiful confirmation of her life's work. It wasn't a cure, but it was the key. She wanted to shout with joy, to find the quiet janitor who had made this possible. But she stopped. She didn't know who she could trust. For Owen, the news was a double-edged sword. He overheard the triumphant whispers. She did it. The Holloway therapy, it's viable. A surge of pure hope shot through him. Poppy had a chance. But then came the cold dread. He had to report this to Leona. He sat in the library again, typing out the report. Subject: breakthrough. Doctor: H stabilized a culture. Proof of concept successful. Used different cellular filters. He sent it. The reply was a text message to the burner phone he'd been instructed to buy. Unknown number. Call me. Now. He stepped into a soundproofed stairwell. She answered on the first ring. Mr. Ledger, Leona's voice was crisp. Your report was promising. I want to know more. That's all I know, Owen lied. The filters were the key. Don't be naive, she snapped. A breakthrough isn't just about filters, it's about process. Dr. Holloway has been secretive about her binding agent technique. What did she do differently? The temperature gradients? The sequencing medium? I need details, Ledger. I'm acquiring intellectual property. Owen froze. She was asking for the soul of Eris's work. The proprietary science Eris had protected with paranoid fervor. To give it to Leona would be the ultimate betrayal. But Poppy's face flashed in his mind. He hesitated. Leona's voice dropped, replaced by pure ice. Don't forget our arrangement. I am holding your daughter's life in my hands. I expect full transparency. Tell me exactly what she did. The silence on the line was a physical weight. Betray Eris. Save Poppy. The choice was as simple and monstrous as that. But there were lines, even for a desperate man. To give away the science would gut the very project that held his daughter's future. He took a breath. I can't, he said, his voice a whisper. What did you say? Leona's voice was dangerously quiet. I can't tell you that, Owen said. Miss Crestwood, I'm a janitor. I don't have access to her research notes or encrypted servers. What I told you is what I overheard. The filters. That's all I know. He was lying, betting everything on her, believing he was powerless, not defiant. The silence that followed was worse than her anger. You are making a very serious mistake, Mr. Ledger, she finally said, her voice dropping to a temperature just above freezing. I expect results, not excuses. Find a way, or I will find a way to make you regret this. The line went dead. Owen leaned his head against the concrete wall, his body trembling. He had defied her. He had chosen to protect Eris, and in doing so, had likely condemned his daughter. He finished his shift in a daze. He was passing Eris's lab on his final round when the smell hit him. A sharp, acrid odor, like bitter almonds and chlorine. A volatile chemical spill. He rushed to the lab door. A large glass beaker lay shattered on the floor, its contents spreading in a sickly pool. A faint vapor was rising. Eris was in her adjoining glass-walled office, her back to the spill, completely engrossed, headphones on. The sensors hadn't triggered an alarm yet, but Owen saw the truth. The beaker hadn't just fallen. It had been positioned on a shelf directly above a heat vent that had just kicked on. Another act of sabotage, aimed not at the research, but at the researcher. As he watched, the building's automated safety protocol kicked in. Heavy steel fire doors began to descend, sealing off the lab wing. Eris finally looked up, her eyes widening as the heavy door to her office began to slide shut, trapping her inside with the fumes. Owen didn't think. He acted. He sprinted to the emergency override panel, smashing the glass with his elbow. He slammed the override button, stopping the fire doors inches from the floor. It wouldn't hold long. He ran to the emergency response locker, punching in a code he had memorized years ago. He strapped a respirator over his face, grabbed a spare, and slid under the heavy fire door. The fumes were thicker inside. "Dr. Holloway!" he yelled. Eris was pounding on the glass of her office, her face pale. The office door was on a separate magnetic lock. Owen found the manual release, a small lever near the floor, and wrenched it open. He burst in and thrust the spare mask at her. Put this on. The fumes are toxic. We have to get out. She took it, her hands shaking. He grabbed her arm and pulled her out of the office. They scrambled on their hands and knees, sliding back under the fire door just as the override failed, and the door slammed shut with the force of a guillotine. They lay panting in the hallway as security guards ran toward them, alarms blaring. Eris pulled the mask from her face. She looked at Owen, who was checking her eyes, her breathing, with clinical intensity. She saw him not as a janitor, but as a professional. The way he knew the codes, the way he moved through the danger, the ingrained competence of an expert. "You're a nurse," she said. A statement, not a question. The pieces clicked into place. "All this time." "You're an ICU nurse, Owen." Caught in the adrenaline, knowing the lie was shattered, could only give a weary, defeated nod. Before he could say more, a sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Mr. Ledger!" They both turned. One of Leona's top security men stood there, his expression grim. "Miss, Crestwood has seen the incident on the security feeds," the man said, his eyes locked on Owen. "She wants to see you." Now the elevator ride to the top floor was the longest of Owen's life. He stared at his reflection in the polished steel doors. A man in a soot-stained janitor's uniform, his eyes wide with fear. He had saved a life but signed his own death warrant. He had defied a queen in her own castle. The doors slid open to Leona Crestwood's private lobby. It was less an office and more a command center. Leona was standing before a wall-sized monitor, her back to him. On the screen, on a silent loop, was the security footage of the rescue. "Leave us," Leona said, without turning. The security guard vanished, the door closing with a heavy click. Owen stood there, waiting for the axe to fall. "The official report calls it an accident," Leona said, still watching the screen. "A cracked beaker. A faulty sensor." She finally turned, her eyes pinning him. "But you and I know that's not what happened, don't we, Mr. Ledger?" Owen swallowed. "No, ma'am." "You defied a direct order less than an hour ago," she stated, her voice flat. "You refuse to give me information I am entitled to. And then, you do this. You reveal yourself to be a highly trained professional masquerading as a janitor." She took a step toward him. "You have been lying to me since the moment I met you." Owen started, but the words died. Every word was true. "I have your entire file right here," she said, tapping a tablet. "I know everything, Owen. St. Michael's, the ventilator, the dead child. The cover-up." She paused. "Tell me your side of it, the part that isn't in the file." There were no more lies. He was exposed. So he told her. He spoke in a low, steady voice, the words coming in a torrent, a dam inside him finally broken. He told her about the ventilator's faulty alarm, about the 3 maintenance reports he had filed that were ignored. He told her about the little boy, Leo, who loved superheroes. He told her about the moment he found him, the alarm silent, the machine that was supposed to be breathing for him. Still. He told her how the hospital's lawyers had descended, how his reports vanished, how they offered him a generous severance with an ironclad non-disclosure agreement. They painted him as a negligent nurse and threatened to ruin him if he fought. He had a sick daughter. He had no choice but to take the deal and disappear. He lost his license, his career, his identity, all to protect a hospital's stock price. When he finished, the silence was profound. Leona was quiet for a long time. She looked from the file to the man before her, a man broken not by a mistake, but by a system of power she knew all too well. She was a master of that system, and she knew a victim of it when she saw one. "The hospital that did this to you," she said finally, her voice laced with a cold fury. "They are a subsidiary of a rival corporation, one I have been trying to acquire." Owen looked at her confused. "You are not a liability, Mr. Ledger," Leona said, a new sharp light in her eyes. "You are an asset, a weapon, and I have been looking for a weapon just like you." She walked to her desk and turned off the monitor. "The old arrangement is over." She looked him directly in the eye, her demeanor shifting from accuser to commander. Here is the new arrangement. I am assigning my top legal team to the Saint, Michael's case. They will reopen the inquiry. They will find your buried reports, and they will expose the cover-up. I am going to clear your name, Owen. Your nursing license will be reinstated. Owen stared, speechless. It was an impossible dream. And I will personally fund your daughter's treatment, Leona continued, her voice ringing with power. Whether Dr. Holloway's therapy is ready or not, I will find the best doctors in the world. Poppy will get the care she needs. That is my promise. She paused, letting the weight of her offer settle. It was everything he had lost, everything he had ever wanted. In return, she said, her voice sharp as a diamond, you will work for me. Not as a janitor, not as a spy. You will be reassigned, effective immediately, to Dr. Holloway's project. Your new title is Clinical Protocol and Safety Manager. You will be her partner. You will use your skills to protect her and my investment. You will work with her to find the saboteur. She leaned forward. You have 1 month, the same deadline I gave her. Save my project, Owen. And in doing so, you will save your daughter and yourself. Do we have a deal? Owen stood in the vast, silent office. Leona Crestwood's offer hung in the air, impossibly bright, impossibly heavy. It was a pardon, a resurrection, a way back. His mind reeled, his name cleared, his license back. Poppy? Saved. He looked at Leona and saw no deception, only the cold certainty of a woman who reshaped the world to her will. She wasn't offering a gift. She was making a strategic investment. He was the key to her project, and Poppy was the key to him. He took a deep breath, the first one that didn't feel scraped raw. Yes, he said, his voice firm and clear. We have a deal. Leona's lips curved into a faint, satisfied smile. She pressed a button on her intercom. Dorian, come in here, and bring the file for our new department head. The transformation was ruthlessly efficient. Within 20 minutes, Owen Ledger, the janitor, ceased to exist. He was escorted to an empty executive office where a tailored suit, shirts, and shoes in his exact size were waiting. He was handed a new ID badge, its gold trim gleaming. Owen Ledger, Clinical Protocol and Safety Manager. He was handed a phone, a laptop, and a stack of papers to sign that he knew was an ironclad contract of loyalty. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The tired, hunted look was replaced by a sharp-edged focus. His first official act was to accompany Leona to the 17th floor. They found Eris in her lab, hunched over a microscope. She looked up, her eyes widening as she saw Owen beside the CEO, dressed in a suit worth more than her car. Dr. Holloway, Leona began. I am assigning a new manager to your project to oversee safety and clinical protocols. This is Owen Ledger. He will have full access to your lab, your research, and your team. He answers directly to me. Is that understood? Eris stared, speechless. Her secret ally, her ghost, was now her boss? Leona, with all due respect, you can't just... I can, and I have. Leona cut her off. Mr. Ledger's expertise in clinical crisis management will be invaluable in safeguarding my investment. Especially in light of recent accidents, Leona turned to leave. I expect you both to work together. Your deadline has not changed. The door closed, leaving Owen and Eris in a profoundly awkward silence. What in the world just happened? Eris asked, a mix of anger and bewilderment. 1 minute you're a janitor, the next you're a manager? Who are you? It's complicated, Owen said. She knows, Eris. She knows about my past, which is... I was a pediatric ICU nurse, he said. I was a good one. Until something went wrong that wasn't my fault. But they made it my fault. Eris studied his face, the data piecing together. The skills in the lobby, the knowledge of the freezer, the rescue. It all fit. So she's blackmailing you, Eris concluded. Not anymore, Owen said. We have a new arrangement. One that helps both of us. He took a step closer. I'm on your side, Eris. I always have been. The only difference is, now I don't have to hide in the shadows. We can finally fight back. Later that afternoon, Owen left the institute and went to the clinic. He found Poppy in the playroom, smaller and paler than ever. He knelt in front of her, his expensive suit feeling ridiculous. "Hey, sweet pea," he said, his voice thick. "Daddy," she whispered, her arms wrapping around his neck. "You're wearing a costume." He laughed, a real laugh. "Something like that. Hey, Pop, I met a very powerful lady. She's going to help us. She's going to help the doctors make you better." Poppy looked at him, her hazel eyes searching his. "Really?" "Really," he said, pulling her close. For the first time in years, it wasn't a lie. It wasn't a desperate hope. It was a promise, backed by the terrifying power of Leona Crestwood. He returned to the institute that evening with a resolve of stone. He found Eris in her office. "I've been thinking," he said. "The saboteur knows you had a breakthrough. They know time is running out. They're going to get desperate. The chemical spill was an escalation. The next attempt will be bigger." Eris looked up. "So what do we do?" "We set a trap," Owen said. "We leak a rumor that you're replicating the breakthrough tonight. A full-scale culture. It will be the most vulnerable stage of the process." Eris's eyes lit up. "And they won't be able to resist the opportunity to destroy it." "Exactly," Owen said. "The saboteur is going to make another move tonight. And this time, we'll be waiting." The lab was a stage. Eris moved with theatrical slowness, deliberately leaving the incubator unlocked and talking to Ben, her assistant, in a voice just loud enough to carry. "The next 12 hours are the most critical, Ben," she announced, holding a shimmering vial. "Everything has to be perfect. Don't let anyone near this lab until morning." The rumor spread through the institute like wildfire. Dr. Holloway was attempting a full-scale replication. Owen had done his part, a quiet word to a security guard about the sensitive overnight experiment. Now, they waited. They sat in a darkened office across the hall, watching a four-way split of the lab's security cameras. The minutes stretched into hours. "Are you scared?" Eris asked quietly. "I've been scared every day for the last 5 years," Owen said. This feels different. It feels like fighting back." They were parents, cornered and desperate, willing to do anything. It was just after 2 a.m. when a shadow moved. The lab door slid open. A figure in a lab coat slipped inside, moving with quiet confidence. It was Dr. Coleman. He walked directly to the incubator, his movements quick and furtive. He pulled a small unlabeled syringe from his pocket. The liquid inside was a murky, dark contaminant. "Now," Owen whispered. They moved together, crossing the hall in seconds. They entered the lab just as Coleman was about to inject the contaminant. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Julian," Eris said, her voice ringing out. Dr. Coleman froze, his head snapping up, his eyes wide with shock and fury. He quickly recovered, a bitter sneer twisting his lips. "Holloway! And the janitor!" he spat, his gaze on Owen's suit. "Playing dress-up, are we?" "It's over, Julian," Eris said. "We know you've been sabotaging the project." "Sabotaging?" Coleman let out a harsh, broken laugh. "I was correcting a mistake. Your success, it's built on the ashes of mine." His face contorted. "My research was going to save people. My wife, she had a degenerative neurological condition. My work could have cured her. But Crestwood pulled my funding, said my results were insufficiently profitable. She gave it all to you." He looked at Eris, his eyes burning. "My wife died 6 months after my lab was shut down. Your success is an insult to her memory. I wasn't going to let this corporation profit from her death." He was a grieving man, warped by a thirst for vengeance. "I'm sorry for your loss, Julian," Eris said with genuine sympathy. "But this isn't the way." "It's the only way left," he roared, and lunged, not at them, but at the incubator's main control panel. Owen moved before he could think. He used his body to shield the panel, absorbing Coleman's momentum and using a calm, practiced hold from his clinical training to neutralize the man's arms without hurting him. "It's over, doctor. It's over. Let it go." Coleman struggled for a moment, then slumped in Owen's hold, the syringe clattering to the floor as sobs of rage and despair shook his body. Just then, the lab doors burst open and security guards flooded the room. They took the weeping doctor, Coleman, into custody. The threat was gone. The research was safe. Owen and Eris stood in the aftermath, adrenaline draining away, leaving exhaustion and victory. Owen's new phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. It was Leona. "I saw the whole thing on my private feed," she said. Her voice was cold, but held a distinct note of satisfaction. "You kept your end of the bargain, Mr. Ledger." There was a pause. "My legal team is filing the motion to reopen the Saint. Michael's case in the morning," Leona said, crisp and decisive. "And a bed is being prepared for your daughter at the Carrick Center, the finest pediatric care facility in the country. They're expecting her. A car will be at your apartment at 8 a.m. Owen sank against a lab counter, his knees suddenly weak. Tears welled in his eyes, hot and fast, blurring the gleaming lab into a watery glow. He had done it. After years of hiding, of running, of praying in the dark, a light had broken through. He had won. The first light of dawn was filtering through the blinds. Owen hadn't slept. He had sat by Poppy's bed all night watching her breathe. He was afraid that if he closed his eyes, it would all be a dream. At precisely 8 a.m., a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. It looked like it belonged to another universe. Owen knelt in front of Poppy, who was dressed in her favorite yellow sweater. "Ready for an adventure, sweet pea?" he asked. "Are we going to see the stars?" she asked. "Even better," Owen said, lifting her into his arms. Her body felt lighter than ever, a weight filled with promise, not despair. "We're going to a place that will make you strong enough to fly to them yourself." The Carrick Center for Pediatric Care wasn't a hospital. It was a place of light and glass, with a garden in the atrium that smelled of earth and blossoms. There was only the quiet hum of hope. They were greeted by the head of pediatric immunology, a woman with kind eyes who spoke to Owen not as a patient's father, but as a colleague. "Mr. Ledger," she said, "Miss, Crestwood has told us all about you. We are so glad you're here. We have the best team in the world ready for Poppy." As Poppy was settled into a bright room overlooking the garden, Owen felt the crushing weight he had carried for 5 years begin to dissolve. He wasn't fighting alone anymore. 3 weeks later, a small article appeared in the financial section. It announced that a subsidiary of Crestwood Industries had acquired St. Michael's Hospital, and that a review of past patient care incidents had been initiated. A week after that, the State Nursing Board, citing newly uncovered evidence, reinstated the license of one Owen Ledger. There was no fanfare, only a clean slate. With Dr. Coleman gone and Leona's full backing, Eris's project surged forward. The HVT-074 therapy, fast-tracked for trials, showed a success rate that was nothing short of miraculous. 6 months after that terrifying night, the world had been reborn. It was a crisp autumn Saturday. In the sunlit atrium of the Carrick Center, Poppy, her cheeks now rosy, was teaching a giggling Finn how to fold a paper crane. Her hands, once frail, were steady and sure. Owen and Eris sat on a nearby bench, watching them. Owen was no longer in a suit or a janitor's uniform. He wore jeans and a polo shirt with a small Holloway Institute logo. His work now was a blend of everything he was. He consulted with Eris on clinical safety and spent afternoons as a patient advocate at the Carrick Center, a balm for families caught in the storms he knew so well. "Look at them," Eris said softly, a genuine smile on her face. "Who would have thought?" "I did," Owen said. "I always had hope in your work, Doctor." "I think you can call me Eris," she replied. Just then, a pair of elegant heels clicked on the floor. Leona Crestwood stood before them, the icy command in her eyes replaced by something warmer, something akin to peace. She looked at the two children, laughing. "The board has approved a new charitable foundation," she said, "the Leo Project. In honor of the little boy from St. Michael's, it will provide legal and financial support for families wronged by medical corporate negligence." She finally looked at Owen. "It seems fighting for one life is a far better return on investment than I ever anticipated." Owen could only nod, his throat tight. Leona reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. She handed it to Owen. Inside was a simple polished silver pin shaped like a single perfect star. "For the star polisher," she said, a faint smile touching her lips. "So you don't forget what it is you really do." She gave a final nod and walked away. A queen who had learned that true power wasn't about controlling empires, but about healing them. Owen looked at the pin, then out at the garden where his daughter was running, her laughter echoing in the sunlit air. He thought of the long, dark years, the silence, the fear. He thought of the man in the gray uniform who believed he was invisible, but he was wrong. No one is ever truly invisible. Sometimes it just takes the right person to see you. A frightened boy, a desperate scientist, a ruthless CEO who had forgotten how to feel. In the end, they had all saved each other. And so, we come to the end of another journey together. It's always a little quiet after a story finishes, isn't it? I'm always curious. What feeling is this story leaving you with right now? It's incredible to think about where these stories travel. So if you feel like sharing, I'd love to see where you're tuning in from in the comments. That's the magic of this, really. Reminding us that we're all connected, all trying to figure out this messy, beautiful thing called life. If you'd like to be part of this space, where we explore those connections, consider subscribing. We're trying to build a small corner of the internet that values empathy. Thank you truly for lending me your time and your attention. It's a gift. Until we meet in the next story, take care of yourself and each other.